At the Aditya Birla Group, our focus has been always to be a partner and enable the development journey of India. And hence, in most areas, wherever we felt there was a need for capacity to be built in India for any commodity, we have gone ahead and done that. So about 25 years ago, we set up the copper smelter at the Dahej. This is a fully integrated copper smelter where we have a smelting facility, we have a refinery, and we have the downstream rod making capability. Roughly about 400 KT capacity, which is close to about 50% of the domestic demand as we speak. Uh, Copper is a complicated mineral, one of the I would say toughest to process. It has over 40 elements of the periodic table that come with the copper ore, which we process, and hence a copper smelter site is a bit like a I would say a mini technology park, right, where you have multiple technologies, where you bring together to ensure that you don't just extract the copper, but you also extract the precious minerals. We make sulfuric acid, which goes into various applications like fertilizers and chemical industries. So there are a lot of other streams that get created, which copper smelter provides. So this is a fully integrated copper smelting site. In India, as you know, we do not have too much of copper ore. Uh, there's only Hindustan Copper, which has a bit of ore, but that's not enough for more than 5-10% of the Indian requirement. And hence, we import all the concentrate from countries which are rich in copper, like South America, Australia, Canada, Indonesia, and we process it here. And our end product is typically a cathode or copper rod, which goes into different applications that then go into the consumer hands. But I would say, for us, our philosophy has been very clear at the group as well as at Hindalco and Birla Copper, which is safety first. And hence, we took all the precautions to ensure that our people at the factories are safe. And when we restarted, we ensured that it is restarted stably with all the checks and precautions done, because I think that was a very, very important element. We had never, I think very few industries had done a complete shutdown and start from scratch, in that we ended up doing in the COVID period. And we were able to ensure that there is no disruption in the domestic market because of any shortage of copper. On the environment and the social and governance on all three areas, we have generally been leaders. And at Hindalco, we have been driving this theme well before the global push began in the last 1 or 2 years. I don't know whether you're aware, but Hindalco is the top ranking aluminum company on ESG on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. On the environment front, two things which we are quite aggressively working on is one, in ensuring that all the wastes that are generated at our plants are reused to the maximum. And hence, we are working with several industries, including some of our own sister concerns like Ultratech or the chemicals business, where some of the waste streams could be reutilized or repurposed into value-adding applications. Second, we are quite consciously working on renewables and adding and substituting some of our coal-based power requirements towards renewables, a mix of solar and wind, I would say. And at Dahej also, we are just embarking on a large project where we are going ahead for about a 20 megawatt which is about 25-30% of our requirement, solar based supply. We have also done, along with GIDC, a desal plant from which we are one of the largest users for supplying water to our Dahej facilities, so that we can reduce the fresh water requirement that the plant has and that GIDC needs to supply. Copper is one of the oldest metals, and we've been using it as mankind for almost 10,000 years. India, or Bharat as it was called then, was one of the pioneers in use of copper for various applications. There are basically three core properties that copper provides. One is, like you rightly said, conductivity or electrical application. Second is thermal applications, and third is antimicrobial applications. So, as most of us in India would are aware, water we have stored at home in copper utensils for a long, long time. In pandemic, it came in very handy, where people realized that, look, copper can be used for antimicrobial applications. In India, the primary application is basically around the housing wires and cables, and winding wires for motors, and probably the automotive wiring harnesses, right? So that, though they remain the bulk of the Indian consumption. From a growth angle, I see four key trends which will shape the demand in the coming decade, or in this decade, I would say. Which is, one is urbanization. So India is urbanizing at a very rapid pace, and we will continue to see very large scale requirement and demand for housing wires and associated cables coming up in India. Second is digital. So as we move to a digital economy, copper will remain the preferred conductor in various applications, especially digital applications, PCBs, chips, and the internal connectors in some of these devices that are digital. Renewables, especially solar, uses a fair bit of copper. And the fourth one, which is just starting, but I think which will be probably be very, very large and see rapid growth, is going to be the e-mobility side, which is going to be around not just the batteries, but also around the charging infrastructure that will be required for enabling e-mobility. We do expect in the next 20-25 years our copper demand to go from less than 1 million tons today to 5 million tons, which is quite substantial. And these four sectors driving a large bulk of the need. India today is probably 1/6 of the global average in terms of its copper consumption, in terms of per capita. And we do expect, as we do more manufacturing in India, and the government has taken several steps to encourage domestic manufacturing. With that and the urbanization that we are seeing, I do expect us to get to the average of the world consumption, per capita consumption level in the near future, and that will help drive the copper demand in the country. And we are gearing up to ensure that we supply and ensure that the Indian dreams and Indian aspirations around copper are met fully. So I think on the first point, definitely, I think copper will be a key. On an average, an EV vehicle requires 4 times the copper of a normal vehicle, right? So from roughly about 25 kgs per car vehicle, you will need about 85-90 kgs per vehicle in EVs. So one, copper consumption per EV will be much higher. Second, we will also see a huge amount of copper being used for the charging infrastructure, which will be required, whether it's batteries, storage, the charging points, the charging network. And there also, copper will remain key. So I think, one, from a growth perspective, yes, big growth of potential. Globally, we expect almost 2 million tons, which is roughly 10% of the market today, which will get added because of the move towards EV in the next 10-15 years. So it's a very huge demand that is going to come up for copper for the EV applications. In India, we are working on being or gearing up for supplying and servicing this need. As you know, the government has recently announced a PLI scheme for battery cell manufacturing in the country, where copper will also be important metal to be used. And we are working with some of them to see if we can do the domestic manufacturing of that copper in India. Today, a large part of this and the cell itself was being imported. So hence the raw material was not made in India. But hopefully now with this PLI scheme and the rapid growth that we expect in this sector, there is economic rationale for developing this capacity in the country, and we'll work towards that. Direction which I am trying to give at EMA is, I think India is poised for a very steep or sharp growth in the electrical and electronics industry. A lot of new demand is going to come in there, both for the domestic market as well as for exports. And I am trying my best to work with my colleagues there to create an awareness about the potential growth opportunities that the sector presents and how our members are able to gear up to take advantage of these growth opportunities. So hence our focus there is around three areas. One is, supporting the government initiative on Atmanirbhar Bharat, where we can encourage more and more manufacturing in India. Second is around developing quality products. Somewhere, like I said, we have compromised on quality many times, and we are trying to push to drive, quality so that we are a good source for global exports also of these products and not just for Indian applications. And I think the third one is to see how some of the new opportunities that are coming up, some of our members can take advantage of those opportunities. So, for example, as we may see traditional thermal plants going down in scale in the country, there will be solar and renewable growth that will happen. And how do some of the members repurpose themselves towards these applications? Because, like you said, what happens is, if I just talk about the copper value chain, as I told you, in India, we do not have enough copper ore. We end up importing copper ore. And when we import copper ore, we end up paying import duty on that copper ore of 2.5%, except, from one or two countries which are under FTA where we get it for zero duty. But on a large part, we end up paying an import duty. Which is 2.5% plus, plus, so it gets to about 2.75%. Now, in the copper business, the conversion margin that we get, for smelting and processing that copper ore is just about 4 or 5%. So, 2.5% hit on that is more than half the margin gone. Whereas many of these other countries like Malaysia and others get copper ore at zero duty, they process it, and then they're able to bring it to India at lower cost. And hence, I think this is a very welcome step